That is not happy.
Oh, while you're on here. So again, this jacket, we found it a couple weeks ago. It was left in the Senate. It's a girl jacket, obviously, but I didn't mean it any way as a guy. It's extra small. It's pretty much all thing. But hey, if there's nobody's, so just give it all to the town of Marshall.
Is there money in the pocket?
There's money left in the pocket. Adam had it for a long time, so. Mr.
Suggestion? I know that RAs are, well, it's been some community, RA communities are doing, it's called a program called Do It in the Dark, and they need, I know that they need shirts and stuff donated.
I'm not going to donate somebody else's shirt.
I'm just saying, if no one claims it.
Just give it to the MSC info desk.
That's what I'm going to do.
Or donate it. Or donate it to someone who.
Hey, you're being sweet, so that's good.
Under the next comment. Where is everybody? Here's your sweater. Commemorative sweater.
I have no front row.
Responsibility. Probably good smell.
Good one. Wait till the front row. Let the records.
Let's go, bro. We'll come back for our stuff. Well, I thought we were already sitting up here for this picture.
Alright, ready? Set, go.
I call this meeting of Senate to order at 6:22 p.m. on April 15th. If I could have everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Mr. Priest, if you'd like to lead us up.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving into first roll call. Is everyone convinced? Okay. 31 present. Moving on. Additions, deletions, and/or clarifications to the order. Additions, deletions, and/or clarifications to the order today. Mr. Kenton.
I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
Any objection to approving the agenda as it stands? Okay. Seeing no objection, thank you, sir. Additions, deletions, and/or changes to the minutes. There were no minutes typed up yet, so Mr. Ulloa.
Motion to postpone the minutes.
Any objections? Seeing none, we postpone until next week. Legislative branch report. Mr. Onto.
Alright, so committee met this week. We discussed a potentially serious issue regarding the status of city government as a public agency. Whether or not legislation for that will come up by the end of this term is still up in the air. But even if we did accept it for next week, we wouldn't make it onto the Senate floor in time. We'd have to go through multiple readings. We'd have to go through 3 readings. So if we need to rush and act expediently, we can. If we don't, then we won't. We passed one other bill. It was a really short bill. Pardon me that I can't remember the exact nature of the bill. Aldridge, could you speak regarding that bill that we passed?
Changes to Title 3.
Changes to Title 3. Yes, that's what we did. Should be on the agenda tonight. Yeah, there it is. Wow. Okay. And yeah, I got a question.
Mr. Ulloa.
Can you expand a little bit on the first thing about...
On the first point. Okay, well, in the midst of the turmoil that happened in the past few months, one of the main points of discussion student government was embroiled in was regarding our status as a public agency or not. And based on that, our legal status as a public agency, we would have to change certain parts in statutes, particularly the ones regarding to the Florida Sunshine Laws and our compliance with those. So if we are considered a public agency, then there are certain things in our statutes that would need to be amended to better reflect that, and if we aren't, then again, there are things that need to be amended to better reflect that in order to avoid some of the sticky situations we got ourselves stuck in. So, actually, I did that there. And so yeah, so it's a really serious issue that needs some time, and that's why I desired for the committee to put it off until legal counsel gave us a little bit more of a solid standing on where we should stand and where we do stand. And until then, we don't want to be treading dangerous waters that we didn't need to. So that's what happened there.
Ms. Pellegrino.
So who decides whether we're a public entity or not, or like where is the final word coming from?
Preferentially, it would be the law, but apparently it's up for debate. And so regardless of what we are, it's best that we have legal counsel behind us. There's been a history in the state of Florida of student governments being caught in some very serious civil lawsuits and very serious damages and vulnerabilities because of non-compliance with Florida Sunshine Laws. And knowing that our legal counsel here would be able to be on our side if, for whatever reason, something like that did come up at USF, is a very reassuring and necessary part of what we do as a student government. So, who makes the decision? Preferentially the law, but we just have to go and run with what has been decided by legal counsel, by legal counsel's advice, and by our own jurisprudence, and hopefully our jurisprudence follows with legal counsel. Okay.
Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appropriations.
All right, good evening, everyone. Appropriations and audits did not meet on Monday, but we're having one more meeting on next Monday, and we're going to be looking at some final budgets. So we're doing accumulating our final report to our chairman and seeing what will happen, what went wrong, what went right. And we're also having our social, I believe, and that is all. Any questions?
You guys are all more than welcome to come out to our social. There will be food Mondays at 12. This Monday at 12.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions? Seeing none, JC.
Alright, so last week JC met and we continued the executive branch end-of-year updates. We had most of the executive branch secretaries. We had all of the departments, and we had Bulls Radio. And this week we are finishing off with the secretaries. We'll have the chief of staff, and we'll also have the remaining agencies to present. Is there any questions?
Seeing none, thank you. Special funding.
Alright, so special funding didn't meet today. We were going to have some kind of a social and a wrap up, but I didn't think it was appropriate with the Senate social. It would overshadow Senate social. So we'll be having one on Tuesday. Again, there will be food. Again, you are welcome to come, just like appropriations. We'll be doing a small wrap up. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, ma'am. And UCGA.
Alrighty. We haven't met so far this week. Our new meeting time will be this Thursday at 10 a.m. So if anyone is willing to come, it is a little disappointing that I had a little bit of a hard time getting a reply from everyone in the committee. I had a reply from 4 people on my doodle, and one of them was our advisor, so it doesn't really help. So if anyone wants to come by, we're going to be working on just kind of reflecting on the previous 10th day and just seeing how we can improve for the next term and just hit the ground running for the next term. Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Aldridge.
Just a couple of things. I'm going to go back out here in a moment because I need to send an email to all the 55th term centers. We are scheduling 4 information sessions between now and next Tuesday's meeting. If you guys, for those who are not returning, you're more than welcome to come. There's no requirement or even no reason why not. It's up to you. But yeah, those are those dates. I was going to say right now it'll be Thursday at 1 o'clock, Thursday at noon, Friday at 1, Monday at 3, and Tuesday at 4. That'll be in the conference room. So just to try to get an idea or try to help tell the new senators about student government and prepare them for the elections and their meeting next week. Positive points is being finished. And I just have to wait on the chairs to do their above and beyond points, so that'll be next week as well, our political red ceremony. And that's about it. So. Yes.
Questions?
That's what they covered.
Cool. And the baby box was 11 points. For positive points, I know I told you guys the top 5 people would get a nice surprise because you actually put your work into it. So we'll figure out. I'm pretty sure we'll just solidify the names and then make sure we get your sizes and figure out what we're gonna get you guys or what you guys get. But yeah, so that's being worked on as well. Other than that, we're just making sure transitions go over smoothly. I do have replies to people wanting this position, and I've heard people actually want other chair positions as well. So we're moving forward. We're figuring out how to help them to the best of our abilities. And other than that, we're just gonna have, again, like Mr. Aldridge said, the info sessions for the new senators. I'd appreciate it if some of you guys did come out and, gave them pointers, because you guys know just as much as everybody else, really. So like, it's really just more helpful, really, because I see this side of it, you guys get to see that side of it. So, there's that. We also have, like, put in the email, Mr. Aziz wanted to remind everybody that there is the groundbreaking ceremony on Thursday. If you guys would like to volunteer or help during Marshall Study Center, I believe it starts on the 23rd, let me know and I'll see, I'll hit up Suja and figure out how to get you guys on that stuff as well. Again, unless you have finals, then I'd rather you study. But yeah, other than that, it's been pretty much just figuring out how to transition smoothly. Question? Thank you. Moving forward. Executive branch report. Mr. Sandoval.
So what we're doing is we're transitioning John Coco and Rondell White. That's it. Is there any questions? Well, thanks.
Not to Mr. Aldridge's caliber, but still good. Okay. Judicial branch report.
Hello, Senate. Keep it short as well. Tomorrow the judicial branch is meeting at 6 o'clock. We'll be discussing transitioning for the justices that will come in on the court next semester. And we're also going to have our last parking appeal here in the chambers at 7:30 for the spring semester. That's all I have to report for this session. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, was that a question?
Sure.
Ms. O'Day.
Are your meetings open to the public, or is it just the justices?
No, ma'am. You can come to
Or
our meeting.
both of them? The one at
Not
6?
the parking appeals. Parking appeals are not so
Alright,
deal
thank
with
you.
like student activism and stuff.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Open forum. Would anyone like to address the body? Ms. Glenn.
So, what was it, last weekend? The 18th? Do it in the dark, Andrew's pool. Come out, it's really fun. You get to do it in the dark. So you have to actually come to know what that means. Alright. Oh, and what time is it? 8? 8? Yeah, it's required. It's around school. It starts at 7. Do it in the dark. Go Bulls.
Thank you. Mr. Aziz.
So like Senate President Patel said, we have the groundbreaking ceremony for the new memorial. Thursday at 10:30 a.m. at Crescent House. Everyone's invited. Should be a short ceremony, about 30 minutes with hard hats and like dirt and shovels. So hope to see you guys there.
They're importing dirt. Any more points from open forum? Mr. Revenge.
I know Chief said tomorrow are the last parking appeals. I know a lot of you haven't got a chance to see them or how we do them. So if you do want to come and watch our parking appeals, just shoot him an email and he'll let you come in and stuff. It's actually pretty cool. Give you some wild stories.
Any more points, discussion? No? Alright, moving into general business. Senate impeachment committee report. Ms. Pellegrino.
Hello, Senate. It's been a crazy week, from anything to trying to find a new advisor to. But anyway, Ms. Morgan's back in the committee. She has officially been allowed to be back, so there was no need to find another advisor. We had a meeting today at 4:30. It was a very brief meeting. However, we went over one interview. We had one interview. Ms. Katif came in to testify, and we went over a little bit of discussion regarding the evidence that had been submitted to the committee up to this point. It was a really brief meeting, so we didn't do much of that. Regarding the evidence, we have up to this point the two affidavits, the evidence submitted by Mr. Osuna, which includes the affidavits he submitted them, and includes his appeal to the Dean for Students with all sorts of material to support all his claims. We also have public records, which I requested last week. They were a little bit late, but we got them all, so we're also reviewing that. Oh, the committee wants to call one more person to testify who was not included before. We will be holding one final hearing. I will send out again an email to everybody who we have been contacting for over 3 weeks now, and they have not responded. There will be one final hearing. I'm just saying, this is your time to please come in. The members of the court have they have expressed their desire to come and testify. That's great, that's wonderful. So yeah, just be on the lookout for that. We had a meeting scheduled for this Thursday, but I'm really sorry. I will have to schedule that one more time because one of the members of the committee can't make it. So I apologize for the person that was scheduled for this Thursday. We'll have to reschedule them. So as of right now, it looks like our next meeting will be Friday from 9 to 12 a.m. Of course, I will be sending out an agenda with enough time in advance so that Mr. Patel can forward it to you all. 12 p.m. Sorry, I said it again. 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Thank you. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Mr. Lowe.
First thing, who's the person who said you thought of that you didn't add to the list the first time that you wanted to interview?
Mr. David Hausman, because he was a co-minority for the affidavits. So the committee decided that we wanted him to come in and testify.
And the second thing that I really want to bring up is a really big one. Did you mention last week that there is no proof of Mr. Aziz being under duress? Is that what you said last week?
Did I say that?
Yeah, when you said there was no evidence of that?
During my report?
No, during questioning.
I may or may not have said that. Honestly, at this point, I cannot recall what I said. I mean, do you have the minutes showing that I said it? I may or may not have said it.
Once Miss Sally hasn't typed.
Alright, so
Okay.
so with that being said, I do have evidence that Mr. Aziz sent an email to the advisors and Mr. Aldridge, which I believe was forwarded to you.
Oh, yeah.
I have that. Stating that he wanted to withdraw because he was under duress. With that being said, I think that's a big part, and that was one of the things that we had under discussion was whether it was the impeachment thing was signed under duress. And I believe that if someone was signing it under duress, it's not a reason to actually continue with it. I believe that along with that and some of the procedural errors that we have done with the committee, the lack of anything being done within the last week except for the one meeting today, I still think that it'd be best to let the impeachment go. The only evidence we have so far, from what I heard, is the one ERC appeal to the dean, which is pretty much the statutes of why he thinks that his appeal should have gone through and why the court shouldn't have was biased on his thing. With that, there's only been 3 as of today. There's only been 3 interviews with 16 people they wanted to do. And not only that, but after looking through the minutes of your meeting, you guys voted to move on with the impeachment committee. After reviewing the thing for 2 minutes, you guys didn't even review the document of the memo of impeachment. You guys didn't even review that in your meeting to actually go through the evidence and see what they have. So
Let's see, there were a lot of hands. Sure.
Okay.
Just don't delve into specifics because that's for your articles if you make it.
Yeah. The memo of impeachment was reviewed in Senate a couple times. We had we had on our own time to go over it. So we did not deem it necessary to go one more time over 7 pages of memo of impeachment in committee after all of us have already reviewed the memo of impeachment on our own time. We decided, I proposed it to the committee, we all decided that no, we can just take points and have a discussion. That's one thing. The second thing that you mentioned, yeah, we actually did not have a very productive week, but I would like to point out the fact that we did not have an advisor until yesterday at night. How are we supposed to conduct business when all of the members of the committee were trying to find an advisor? I mean, we were basically placed in a position that we were having to go outside of our comfort zone to try to find someone to serve in this committee to do what Senate wants to do. Because at the end of the day, this is what Senate wants to do, and that's what we're doing. And that's what the position that we were placed in. So it's very difficult to actually conduct business and trying to do something for the Senate Impeachment Committee when we didn't even have an advisor. That's one thing. The other thing you mentioned, actually I forgot the other thing you mentioned. Oh, the number of interviews. Again, we have been having to reschedule over and over and over because every time there is something coming up, we had how many interviews? 1, 2, 3, 3 interviews up to this point, and we will reschedule the next one. And also, honestly, I cannot reschedule interviews when people are not being forward to being interviewed. From 16 people, only 7 replied the first time. I sent out another email last week, and from the other, I believe like 9, 10 people, only 2 people replied. I cannot force anybody to schedule an interview, and therefore I cannot schedule an interview if they're not filling out the doodle.
Thank you. Mr. Masuna, then Mr. Canton, then Mr. Wolf.
Alright, a couple of points. First of all, I think there was a comment about how the signatures under duress, it's not accepted. Are we talking about in a court case, like in a court?
Is this relevant to the...
Yeah, because there were points mentioned to the Senate. I just want to make sure that everything, because I use those signatures, that affidavit in my appeal. So anyways, alright, we can go on. I mean, I guess you meant in a court, because in a court, actually, they will take, you can sign things under duress, but unless you prove that there was physical coercion, they will not accept the repeal of it. That's just the way it works in the court, and there has to be evidence of you only say I was physically coerced, first of all. Second of all, my appeal wasn't just statutes, the majority of it was violations of statutes or ROPs, but there was also minutes and emails and 2 submitted affidavits that I gave to the impeachment committee. So I don't want you guys to do my work or the work of the Senate Impeachment Committee based off of misinformation.
Thank you. Mr. Canton.
I guess I just had a question that was brought up like a few weeks ago that was kind of touched on, but considering that there's been all these delays and stuff, like, what's the procedure if this keeps on going and we see the next, or if we haven't like fully resolved this matter by the next term?
It is dissolved and it's on the next Senate to pick up if they choose so. No different than the NASAR bill. Like if ASAR moves in, the next Senate gets to do whatever they want. Oh, Mr. Bowles.
Just a point of inquiry. What did the signed affidavits actually say?
I would not advise to talk about evidence until the articles. Just because that's the whole point of, like, they're investigating right now. So they can't go and tell you, that's fine, you can public record request it if you'd like, but the whole point is just the evidence is for them to sift through and then present whatever with whatever. And the articles. So you'll see it if we get there. Mr. Osuna.
Sorry, was your question about the affidavits?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so they are public record. I sent them as an appeal. I have copies of them, they're on my email. They've been sent to Mr. Manka as well as the Oracle and to the Senate Impeachment Committee, and I'm pretty sure Ms. Jessica Morgan also has a copy, so they're pretty much everywhere in government. So if you also want to see, you can ask any of the aforementioned groups, except I guess the Senate Impeachment Committee if they want to keep it confidential for now. You should ask me, the Oracle, Mr. Manka, Ms. Morgan, or pretty much even Mr. Freeman. You guys want to.
I was actually called the record requested for the affidavits last week. as you says, I withdrew my signature because it was made under duress. That's basically announcing, making it official that you withdraw your signature. That is not an evidence of duress. There actually wasn't anything saying, this happened, this was the situation, therefore this classifies as duress. That's just making it an announcement, an official announcement, letting administration or a guide know, as I see it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Eloge and Mr. Brown.
Just want to point out the definition of duress is threats, violence, restraints, or action brought against someone to get someone to do something against their valid judgment. I believe by him stating to advisors that he signed it under duress proves that he didn't necessarily want to sign it, he was forced into signing it, which therefore means that one person who signed the bill originally was pretty much forced to sign the bill, and another person felt that it was causing a lot of trouble among SG as a whole and everything, and said that he was not in support of the continuing this committee. I think that says a lot towards the committee, and I know last week and the week before we had talked about a major thing in the continuation of this committee was whether the signature was still wanted, whether it was made under duress, and that was a big question. And the email to the advisors shows that. Along with that, I think a big part of it is that we never actually decided, we were talking about finalization of the thing, whether he can withdraw the signature and whether that's even allowed. And we as a Senate never even voted on whether to go along with the impeachment thing as a whole. We formed a committee, but we never voted, so it's not even finalized. So according to the legal opinion from the Attorney General, the committee shouldn't technically, as based on the legal opinion from the Attorney General, who was pretty much hired to review statutes to give legal opinions for that, says that it should not continue. So I think that's a big thing that we really need to consider, especially with 1 week left. You need 72 hours in order to conduct interviews with people, which means the earliest that we can even do interviews would be Monday, which means everything would have to be done Monday and during the day Tuesday in order to get to us before the end of the term. I don't think it's enough time to finalize a whole impeachment committee with evidence if you have possibly 13 more people that want to give evidence, because I know we have the justices that you said earlier. I know you talked about in the committee about Mr. Aziz, and you talked about in the committee possible Mr. McCants. So when you have all these people, I don't think 1 day, possibly 2 days, is enough time to hear testimony and review testimony before our next Senate meeting.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown.
You said that the email was basically an accusation or a statement and that it wasn't actual evidence of coercion. So then by the logic of your committee, that'd be grounds for investigation, correct?
Wait, can you say that one more time?
I said that the statement is more of the statement that Mr. Aziz gave in the email is an actual evidence of coercion, you said, correct? Well then by the logic of your committee, which took up this case in the first place, that would be grounds for investigation.
Well, I would like to say
Wait,
that.
there's an order. Mr. Sana, then Mr. Malgrino, then Ms. Abramat, then Mr. O'Mara.
Alright, a couple of points. So first off, Mr. Brown brings up a valid point that PPPs are investigative, but then you have to get 3 senators to submit and say which articles were violated. So the committee doesn't go ahead and say, we want to investigate this person, not a sovereign entity. They're formed by Senate. Second, I have a question for Senate President. When you guys pass something by acclamation, does that count as finalized even though no vote was tallied for it?
Yes, sir.
Like
resolutions.
Perfect. That's what I was alluding to. Just wanted to keep that in mind. Sorry?
I don't believe it passed. I think you're going to straight.
There's an order, guys.
Alright, and then next up, so the email that was submitted, I never saw it. So if somebody would like to read it out, that'd be great. But one question before you read it out, make sure that it may have just been a statement. First of all, under duress could mean a million different things. It could just mean I was pressured by the situation, which is the most likely scenario. First of all. Second of all, for you to call it coercion, there'd have to be, at least legally speaking, some sort of threat of physical harm. And unless there's evidence to it, that just makes it a baseless accusation, like some of those that have been put forth before, which would be highly inappropriate, especially in a situation where Mr. Buenaventura, Mr. Hamid, and Mr. Shapiro are both treated. This is a very tough situation for them. It's not like this is just playing games and throwing out baseless accusations. So we need to make sure everything we say is accountable and honest and has a solid foundation in reality.
Thank you, sir. And then we must
Point of personal privilege?
Yes, sir.
If the Senate has no objections, can I please motion for an actual moderated caucus for this discussion? And speaking time, 10 minutes.
Sure. Any objections? Thank you.
Do you have an objection?
You don't have to. Would you like to yield your first point back to me so that way you don't have to talk, or are you willing to
Absolutely.
talk?
I'll yield it to whoever the order was in at the start of this motion.
Alright, you said 10 minutes. You want this?
I think it was Miss Ball.
Miss Alberton. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, the only thing I wanted to ask was last week when, after voting, when we decided not to disband the committee, we said we would go back to discussion if there's any new information that's been put forth. Everything Mr. Ulloa just said was everything we said last week. Unless we have new information, I think we should just move on to general business.
Thank you. Then Mr. Bazmoose, then Mr. Canton.
Well, this is about the third time I've heard people claiming on Mr. Aziz's behalf that he's been under duress or coerced. If Mr. Aziz would like to come forward either in front of the Senate or in front of the impeachment committee, he's welcome to do that, but he has not yet. So I don't think that kind of statement is relevant to other people at this point. Number two, there's a lot of evidence that is submitted to the impeachment committee that is very relevant. The fact that people who aren't in the committee are saying that it's not, it doesn't make any sense. How are you going to say that? And third of all, we already voted on this last week, so why are we going into discussion again about stuff that isn't relevant? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Canton.
I mean, I'm just pointing out because it seems logical to me. There's people saying that they have in their possession an actual email now that has from Senator Aziz where he says that he was under duress directly, which was something that we didn't have last Senate meeting and that people were asking about the existence of. So I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't have a discussion. I'm just saying that is, to me, that was new, that there's an actual email that was shown. That's all I'm saying.
Mr.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Senator Canton's point. I don't hold his points, but I think they're relevant at this point. But the biggest part is obviously the more information that comes to light that is pertinent to the memo of impeachment and can either help to validate or invalidate those things are obviously going to be taken into account. So if there's an email, he's saying that it's not valid, it's going to be taken into account with everything else. You know, so those are the things you have to realize. Like, does his statement immediately invalidate anything else? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends because they're both statements from the same person. So it's just going to be difficult. It's something that the committee has to decide. And all to Yulo's point, I do understand that it's like short notice, but we don't make a decision. Senate makes a decision. All we do is provide information about what we found. And I think that's best for Senate.
Thank you. Ms. Pellegrino.
This email was sent out on April 2nd, so it was way before last week's Senate meeting, and he said, "Dear all, I withdraw my signature from the memo of impeachment, period. The signature was made under duress, period. Sincerely, Abdulaziz." That's one thing. The other thing, just because someone was asking for the actual email, there it is. And one more thing, you mentioned that was ground for investigation. We must absolutely not do anything or investigate anything, any violation outside from the memo of impeachment. Even if something that is directly relevant to this memo of impeachment comes up, we must ignore that information. We have to strictly just do what the memo of impeachment says. So in that case, somebody mentioned, bring up another memo of impeachment, 3 more signatures, another Senate impeachment committee or investigation, and go ahead and proceed with that. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Bonaventura.
I just want to say something to the Senate. Every time I hear this word duress, it's something that should be considered by the Senate. You're talking about people that are going to potentially have their jobs on the line. These are people that require this source of income as their only source of income to make payments on rent and things like that. So from our side of the view, when we hear these allegations of potentially somebody signing something under duress or whatever it may be, it's something that I feel that you guys, representatives of the students, should take into account. Because if it's something that's just going to be swept under the rug, then it's going to be, you guys are doing a disservice to the students if you don't acknowledge them. So that is my only take that I will say at this point. take it how you will. There are people that are concerned about this, and I just want the Senate to acknowledge that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Miss Abraham.
I know we're in discussion. Are we permitted to ask the court any questions? Since he was just in the
In moderated caucus, you can ask the air, and somebody can reply if they choose to do so.
Okay. Now, I was just wondering if the air. I was just wondering if you had any chance to reply to any of the emails from the impeachment committee. Are you willing to come and testify on the allegations? So, sorry. I relay my time to Ms. Larger.
You relieve it to me.
Okay, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Yolo.
Just to answer your question, I think Ms. Pellegrino said earlier in her statements that the court has agreed to come in later to address the court. And I believe I was in the meeting with Mr. in the impeachment meeting earlier, and Mr. Buenaventura mentioned that he would like to come in and talk and open.
Thank you, sir.
So that was that. The next thing, I just want to point out that every day that we go into this impeachment committee, these justices are focused more on their impeachment and parking forms, stuff like that. I think it's very important to realize that we should, if there's not a whole lot of time left, we should let them focus on transitioning, let them focus on their jobs rather than this impeachment committee trying to get them to testify, stuff like that. So.
Thanks, sir. And Ms. Pellegrino.
I've received multiple emails from the members of the court. Today, in committee, at 4:10, after 3 weeks of exhaust of the investigation, Mr. Buenaventura made reference that he would like to come here to testify. But we're talking after several emails of no reply, of no filling out the total, of having absolutely no response. The only member.
I think you made your point.
Okay.
Mr. Buenaventura.
I think it's kind of ironic that we're speaking about duress on one end and there's allegations of duress on both sides of this.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Romero.
I want to move to close discussion.
Sure. You have 4.5 minutes left in your caucus. Are there any objections? Seeing none, it is closed. Mr. Lowe.
I would like to move to disband the impeachment committee.
Any objections? Senator Myers.
I was gonna say we brought this up last week. I was just going around the points. I understand. I value your opinion.
Oh, this is your objection. Okay.
Yeah, I value your opinion, but we already went over this last week for disbanding.
Thank you, sir. Alright. Beaverson.
No, I do not.
Okay.
And can we make sure that the 3 that signed the impeachment and the 3 that are in the committee are not voting? And they abstain because of that.
Committee does not have to abstain. Only accusers and accused.
Would it not be biased towards the fact that they know some of the background information and stuff that they could lean one way or another? Wouldn't it be just as biased as those that signed the committee, signed the things?
Wouldn't that be the same thing as saying people in appropriations shouldn't vote on a bill if they already voted on it the first time? Then their bill is exactly, they're going to vote yes because they made it here. Cool. Alright, so, and your motion was to disband, and, okay. Oh, okay.
No, we're voting to disband.
Yeah, it's a vote to disband. Yeah, okay, just making sure. Alright, so, Mr. Hartman, is that a point of
Multiple people objected.
Excuse me, that's not voting, but if you vote yes, then it disbands. If you vote no, then it goes back to the voting.
Yeah, we'll get to the point in a second. So what we have is a vote to disband the impeachment committee. 1 is yes to disband, 2 is no to not disband, and 3 is to abstain. Question? No questions, alright. That's everybody? No, wait, I'm just missing, am I missing a vote?
You're missing it.
Oh, abstention. I forgot to abstain, I'm sorry. So.
Okay, hold on, just,
Sorry.
what was your, so your vote is to abstain from?
My vote was no, and I will change it to abstain.
Thank you, ma'am, so let the record reflect, thank you, Mr. Aldridge. Let the record reflect 9 to 20 to 4. Cool. Mr. Brown.
I just have a point of inquiry.
Sure, go ahead.
I received information from Mr. Aldridge saying that the vote count from last week was lost because the turning point thing was unplugged. So did we get to reestablish the vote from last week, or get to reestablish the vote from last week?
We don't have the actual character.
Alright.
Peoples, but you have this now. Both, like, it's just technology.
So he's saying that like who voted for yes, no.
Alright. Seeing no other comments, points. Statutory legislation on first reading, SBS 54023, an act to update Title III. If the presenter could please step to the front, whoever he or she may be. Mr. Aldridge, here's the clicker.
Thank you very much.
And you get the phone Elizabeth. Do I have a motion? Mr. Rodriguez.
I moved into the first reading of SBS 54023.
Any objections to entering first reading of an act to update Title III? Seeing no objections, Mr. Aldridge.
Alright, the intent of this legislation should be to update Title III. At the moment in which the bill was drafted, I was giving it some vagueness in case there's other amendments need to be made in committee, but there were no amendments. So if we can move down to the two changes in 301.3.10, the change is to add this clause that would state that the student president statutorily would officially present the activity and service fee increase request to the University of South Florida Local Fee Committee in conjunction with the chair of the Activity and Service Fee Recommendation Committee. And then the subclause would also be added that the student president shall not be one of the 3 student members appointed by the student vice president to sit on the local fee committee. Now the only caveat I want to make real quick to the amendment is that in talking with about what's happened in the past, and talking with Mr. Warnke, he felt like we can understand why this would be the case, but then he also felt this would be the same way for the chair of ASAR. So there's no bill per se tonight, or probably in the rest of his term do that. That'd be one of the first things I'd suggest to the rules chair for next term, is to make the subsequent change into Title VI for the ASAR duties. That they would present with the student president, but not some committee. And then also just a quick background about why. In the past, probably until about 4 or 5 years ago, the fee increase request at least came through student government, and then for whatever reason it was not all of a sudden went to student government. So you either had the vice president of student affairs or the dean for students come present this for the local fee committee. But when you think about it, the ANSP, for those people that came in the past, that's not all of the ANSP. So the dean for students would only take care of maybe CLCE, CSI, student government, something like that. It wouldn't take care of the Marshall Center or campus recreation, for example. So the idea is that the ANSP is student government allocating this money, so we obviously deal with student government and student organizations. And then we also understand every department out there. We see every department coming in because they come request us, so we're the one central body throughout all of that. That's why the idea is to make the change and put it in here, and then subsequently in future requests to the local fee committee, internally they would adopt different procedures to have the request go forward. The ASAR chair and the student president let them review it for themselves, make their own determinations of students which should go forward to the local fee committee, and have the procedure followed. So that's it. And that's the only changes in the back. Or in the chapter, sorry.
Any questions for the presenter? Mr. Romero.
So with this change, are you just stating that the president and the chair need to present it to ASAR, need to present the changes to ASAR?
No.
Or
the chair and the student president are going to present the increase request to the local fee committee.
Okay, so the other way around.
If you go
I mean, hypothetically, so the chair and Senate President could then, after it's decided in local fee, then come to ASARC and say, here's what they approved. But this is one step before going to ASARC. This is the local fee committee deciding whether or not they would like to put an increase in the fee for those reasons that are submitted.
And just to give a background to everybody else who's eagerly paying attention, local fee committee is similar to, like, you can imagine ASARC as a committee, allocates money. Local fee specifically examines the fee and sees if there are increased requests, where across the board would you apply those increases. So you come in and say, hey, we need, you know, 1 more cent a credit hour so we can, you know, incorporate Adam's Subway into the ANSP. And you bring that to committee. Committee votes on the relevantness and then presents it to the board of trustees, who is then the ultimate sayer, yes or no. And then that is obviously with Mr. Scott's discussion of is it okay or not. But that's fine, so it's a different game of politics. But what you have is that's local fee, and so that is the local fee they're addressing, not our committees of ASARC for.
So like just to list a couple examples, you had, you know, so the campus recreation, there was conversation over the course of the year to put on a different transition, all their equipment. This would require an increase, so this would be one of the requests. I mean, there's 15 to 20 things that are usually put on the request. But that would be something that the student president and ASARC chair would have some discussions with about what they feel is best. Mr. Romano.
I guess the second point is 301.3.10.1. That's stating that the president isn't going to be one of the 3 people who decides, correct?
Correct.
Although he usually has been in the past. Yes or no?
He could have been.
He could have been.
The last 2 years he has been. It's up to the discretion of the student body president because he's the one who gets the appointment. He would still have the control of who to appoint, he would not be himself. Mr. Romano.
What was the reasoning for that? What was your reasoning for that?
More or less the concept that you would be presenting something and then voting back on it. Right. So I mean, like for most, now I understand maybe some of the student organizations, maybe we do that when we're presenting to ASARC, but for like departments, they're not the one voting on this, for example. That'd be one example. So this the idea would be that there's 40,000. Well, there's other ideas. That there's 40,000 students in the university. See, my president has a cabinet, you know, 30 people. There's a senate of 60. There are qualified people to be able to make the decision, and there's only 3 people you have to appoint. If you're presenting it, I feel like I think the idea was that it's not really the most representative to also put yourself on one of those 3 people making those decisions. Between those 2 reasons. Questions? Mr. Aziz.
There are no more questions. I'll make a motion to postpone to next week.
Any objections? Ms. Glenn.
I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Aziz, do you receive?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So, is this pertinent to like get it done before next week? Or, you know what I mean, to get the vote passed?
So, there's no okay. There's no, the answer would be no. But there's a caveat to that. It obviously needs to be done at some kind of term. I think the only concern that I would just express is that next week is also going to be the elections, and you're going to have the bullseye ceremony, so it depends on, do you want to spend time doing legislation before you go to the bullseye ceremony next week, or do you want to take the time to do it now and then have that go? Because my guess is that the rules, unless something happens abruptly with the public agency thing, there's going to be nothing coming from rules. Unless there's a student organization that suddenly puts in the request, there may be 1 bill, 3 bills coming from appropriations. So the idea would be to limit that, but it's still up to you as a Senate.
Don't let Adam convince you. It's onto your choice. Miss Alberto.
I mean, unless they're saying that elections have nothing to do with this current term, they're for the next
Oh no, but you don't want to be rude to the next time. I mean, it's honestly it's your choice, but we stayed till 10:30 for elections last time. So the longer our meeting lasts, the longer their meeting lasts. The later their meeting lasts. Mr. Obenemund.
For next week's meeting, does all the business for this year's Senate end before the new Senate is coming, or do we continue after the election?
No. You can't have any other business because you can't have any other meetings.
Yeah. So all these business will finish, then elections.
Yeah.
That's the rule. Ms. Pellegrino.
Yeah, motion to close the reading?
No, once you hit the bottom of it, it automatically closes. Mr.
Alright.
Parliamentarian, is that correct? Once we get to the bottom of the bill, it closes. Thank you, sir. Ms. Pellegrino.
I motion to enter the third reading of.
Second.
Okay, second reading of SPS 540223.
Any objections to entering second reading? Any points of discussion? If any of your constituents ask you what you just did, could you explain to them what in this, could you explain what this says? That's pretty much all the question. Mr. Canton, here's the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Canton.
So, just a question, is there any time that, because I don't recall it happening during this term, but maybe it's missed or something, is there a time where what the local fee increases that are going to be recommended are brought before the Senate at any point?
No.
Has there been any consideration of that in the past?
Mr. Mankin, do you know by any chance?
Rephrase your question.
Has local fee been presented to Senate before, ever? No.
Directly to Senate, no, it's a state statute. The president of the university and the president of the student body chair the committee, 3 staff, 3 students, picked by each president respectively. They meet and discuss how A&S and the athletic fee increases and deliver and make a decision.
Thank you, sir. And you would pretty much just ask Mr. Warmke anytime he gives you an update, essentially.
So here's
Mr. Priest.
the second reading, by the way.
Mr. Priest. Oh, yeah, please, 1 second. Motion for second reading. Here it is. SBS 540223, Act Update 3. And they seem to be the same exact changes you can turn them. Mr. Priest.
Alright, so just because we did make points to the president, I would not be able to explain this constituents right now, and I don't know what half of this could. I mean, if I'm in the minority, pardon me, but I'd like to hear just more.
Sure.
Now, you don't have to read everything.
Yeah. In summation.
Can you summarize what you had?
Mr. Aldridge, would you like to submit?
Sure. So, in the past, local fee requests was brought forward by someone either from, someone was from administration the last 3 or 4 years. Whether it had been the vice president of student affairs, teacher students, or anybody. The concern was that there's 2 concerns really. One is the A&S fee that's a student fee. And so you want how the students have any voice in whether or not they're using it is in terms of voting on it, but it's also the A&S fee specifically that we're bringing forward. So the idea is the student should have student input on which projects should go before they could be in the first one. The second concern is that dean for students or vice president of student affairs, they don't necessarily cover the whole, gauntlet of departments, student government organizations that we allocate in the A&S budget. So for dean for students, they, for example, they don't have any control over the Marshall Center or Chemist Recreation Center, and that's obviously it's pretty close to maybe third after the budget. About a third. So it's pretty significant, and those departments are now represented by the dean for students, and they present to the local people. So the idea is to make this put in statutory in statutes where the student body president who has experience, who does have experience with the local fee committee, and the chair of ASAR who tends to have experience with the A&S budget, the 2 of them will be presenting it to the local fee. And then the silent stuff clause only means that the student body president will not sit on it for the reasons I sort of explained to Mr. Romero that it's only 3 people. There's first of all there's 40,000 people in the university. It's not really the most representative for you to present and then also vote on your same presentation. I mean, in this case, I'm presenting, but it's also 50 different people you can vote on, not where it is more two other students vote.
Mr. Is that a follow-up or? Okay, go ahead.
So who would take the seat of president?
The student body president?
Yes.
The student body president still has the ability to appoint whoever 3 students he wants to appoint. So he's never had the student body president and the university president have never had seats. They've always just had the ability to appoint. And the student president usually just, the last 2 years have said, I'm gonna appoint myself. So, for whatever reasons that they would provide. So, yeah, they never have permanent seats in that. They just have the permanent ability to appoint, as Mr. Menke said, from the state statute.
Ms. Bellinger.
Hey guys. Okay, I'm back. And my question was, is there a time, should there be a time frame for time as far as like when you speak with the
That timeline, you're talking about like a local fee committee timeline?
Yeah, like when
Because
they-
that's, I'm sorry not to interrupt, but that's dictated already in university policies, in terms of, there's a deadline for them to meet in the first place. And so, the university president and the student president are already required to call to order, I think maybe the 3rd week of September, it's sometime early on. And there's not been a deadline in terms of when they must complete it by. It's just always been the fall semester, because in the spring it's usually the allocation process. But that's not necessarily something that we can impose upon the local fee committee, because that sort of, it's not outside the realm of student government, but it's an independent function, separate from student government.
Ms. Belzer.
I guess I was saying not the local fee committee, but like the president requesting to.
You mean like the ASAR chair and the student body president presenting the local fee request to the committee?
Yeah.
I mean,
Is there like?
no, there's not. It's just the local fee committee will only meet 4 or 5 times to do their business, so it has to be completed by the time.
And they'll probably set the deadline.
And they'll set the deadline. The local fee committee sets the deadline. So.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Since this directly affects the president, Mr. Warren, do you have an opinion about this?
He completely agreed with it. That the only thing I just mentioned was that he said, the student body president shouldn't sit on it. Then it probably also makes sense for the chair of the ASAR committee not sit on it. So, and I agree with that completely. I think that's completely reasonable. The only thing is, this bill wouldn't be able to make that change. So we just, as I said, one of the first bills for the next term, we did change that. And you really could just copy and paste most of those 2 clauses into Title VI.
And don't go off someone's opinion. Just because it affects them doesn't mean you should, change the way laws are written. It should be off of facts, points, and discussion. Mr. Ulloa.
I have a couple questions. So the first thing is, this committee goes and reports back to the ASAR committee, so essentially the president will be hearing it in the ASAR committee, or no?
Local fee does not report to ASAR.
Usually the members that sit on the student side will have just a little bit of short explanation if there's any questions about what happened. The students will provide that, but it's going to be the same thing regardless. So whatever students are on the local fee committee, they are usually student government. If not, they're connected to student government in a way where they're going to take it upon themselves to come back to ASAR and explain any questions that are. That's usually one of the first processes that we do, is that we look at what the local fee committee has approved.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Briggs.
This doesn't stop the student body vice president.
No, sir. Or the chief staff, CFO, anybody.
Ms. Belzer.
Okay. But should, I guess, well, to that 2 would be, okay. Sure, sorry. Would, the chair of ASAR, not actually,
It is ASAR. That is the ASAR.
okay, the chair of ASAR, are they allowed, if they're presenting the bill or presenting the request alongside the president?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so would they?
Be allowed to sit on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Warmke thought that if the student president couldn't sit on it, then the chair of ASAR can sit on it. And I would tend to agree with that. The only thing is with this bill, this is only the executive branch and the office of the duties of the president. So you couldn't make that imposition upon the ASAR chair in the executive branch bill. And that's the only why, so that's why I would suggest that the first bill would be to make that same stipulation into the ASAR chair. That they would present to the local fee committee with the student president, and that they could not sit on it themselves.
Right, just really quick, Peter Jeff. You could include that as a part of their job description under their statute, but you can just write here, he or she may not appoint chair of ASAR automatically, because this is the only place, because ASAR chair can't appoint themselves, nor can we appoint anybody, it's all on the power of the president. So it could just be a subclause of not appoint members of that, you could just add on saying they will not appoint himself or this person. That's just a point. Mr. Romero, then Ms. Lund, was that correct? No, Ms. Lund.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Romero. Can we just make that clause happen? Like, can we do
It'd have
that?
to be your clause. However you want to word it. I'm just saying one of the ideas for you.
So, if anybody has any,
Mr. Romero.
yeah.
Well, I mean, before we put in the clause, I kind of have my own reason, but I don't think it states clearly enough. What was exactly, because the reason for the student body president not being one is because I don't believe that if you have the power to appoint, you should also appoint yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't think that like you said is the best representation. But what is your reasoning for the ASAR chair not also being on, besides the fact that they present? Because the ASAR chair doesn't have any power to appoint, you know? So I mean, I just wanted a further explanation about what we put in the clause. Or at least your reasoning on not necessarily that
My
you
reasoning is pretty much the same thing, that they are presenting the request before the social committee, and I don't think it's the most representative for them to also be sitting on it and voting on it. I agree, I understand where you're coming from, that they're not making the appointments, but it's just, and I guess another way parallel it is that neither the health fee nor the athletic fee have people to sit on. So the athletic director did not sit on the local people committee. The health, and I'm not going to know what the official title is of the top person in health, but that person didn't sit. But now they may have people that agree with their opinions, just like maybe student government might put forward the vice president, who probably agrees with the student vice president, but the people presenting are not sitting on the side.
Mr. Ulloa, then Mr. Kenton.
Alright, on that being said, can I amend 301.3.10.1 to say student body president and the chair of activity and service fee recommendation? And that be one of three, for any of the three.
You said and?
Yeah.
Mr. Kenton. Alright, actually, any objections to the stated? Okay then, Mr. Kenton.
I don't object to the intent of the amendment, but I think that for the sake of keeping our statutes clear, it's not the appropriate, we shouldn't be delineating the responsibilities and the restrictions placed upon the ASARC chair in the title related to presidential powers. I think that this would be more appropriate as a separate amendment. It's a little bit slower, but if you keep on doing this stuff enough, you're gonna have it will be impossible to figure out where our statutes are if you continue doing this over and over again, because we'll have the responsibilities of different members of student government put all throughout statutes instead of keeping them codified in a single place that they should be.
Do you send your amendment?
I will send.
Thank you.
For discussion.
I'll just leave it up there so you guys can keep reading it, and obviously it's in different colors, so. Mr. Romero.
Well, I mean, the reason I disagree with that, I agree with like the point you're making, like generally, but I disagree with the point in regards to this because of the fact that it is the president's job to appoint the people, you know? So it should be under his description to understand that he can't appoint either himself or the chair. You know what I'm saying? I just think it's something that he should understand. I completely agree with your point, generally speaking, but I also think that just for clarification to his position, he should be able to understand, his or her position, he should be able to understand that he or her can't appoint himself or the chair. That's really the only thing.
Ms. Hoden.
Okay, so can you make a friendly amendment to the amendment that's
It does not exist, so if you can just.
Okay, so
can I make an amendment to say that the student body president shall not appoint the chair of activity service fee recommendation committee? Student body president shall not appoint the chair of the activities and service fee recommendation committee, nor shall they appoint themselves, I guess? Of course.
Friendly amendment. It says appointed later on, so the appointing is in the second half of the thing as opposed to the first. So the first half, where it says student body president, is referring to who can't be appointed under this amendment. So where it says the student body president, the first 4 words of the line is referring to who can't be appointed, because the appointment is placed in the second half of the actual statute. So by adding that, then you're saying the student body president shall not appoint, shall not be appointed by the student body president.
Right.
What about this friendly amendment? Neither the student body president nor the chair of the activity and service fee recommendation committee shall be one of the 3 students members appointed to the
I will
student body
accept that.
president. I think that makes sense.
Is that what you said? Mr. Romero, if you could double check this writing and authenticate that it is your authentic, they are yours.
Take out other student vice president. After appointed. Between by and president. So that the sentence is written out, the student vice president or the chair of the committee shall be one of the 3 student members appointed to the local committee. Because him appointed is already stated in the statute, it's just a restatement.
There's no words. I validate that.
Alright, so for your understanding, it reads, neither the student body president nor the chair of the activity and service fee recommendation committee shall be one of the 3 student members appointed to sit on the local fee committee. Any objections to said amendment? Mr. Onsor.
Again, I think this presents the same problem that Mr. Canton just brought up in that it's delineating more along the duties of the chair of the activity and service recommendation committee, and although it is a syntactical difference, the thing is that, again, this breaks that boundary of where are we going to delineate where we put president's duties and the ASAR chair's duties. If it helps serve, I think we should put just another subclause saying, well, one subclause for the president not being allowed to sit on the local committee, and then a subclause saying he shall not appoint the ASAR chair. If we so desperately want to include the ASAR chair in this type of change right now, immediately at this meeting. The thing is, we can just say that for the ASAR chair's chapter in Title VI or wherever, and that would be more straightforward in understanding that the ASAR chair will not be on this committee, the local fee committee, so that he can present, or he or she can present instead. But for those reasons, because this delineates, the way it's written now, says that the chair, it gives a duty / restriction upon the chair of the activity and service recommendation committee. I do not think it belongs in chapter 301.
Just for clarification, earlier discussion said it's not a restriction on the chair, it's a restriction on the student body president may not appoint person X. So instead of having the student body
The way it's
president read
written,
through all
it's not,
statutes.
the way it's written, it says the chair of the activity and service recommendation committee shall not be one of the 3 student members.
One of the members appointed.
Touche.
It's inherent that.
Well, I would just much rather than it be put into 2 subclauses. That's what I wanted.
That's I mean, I'm just making sure that all
If
the
that's
elements
okay.
are reiterated.
Alright.
So do you object to the amendment?
I still do object.
Okay, Mr. Okay. Oh, we're waiting for us now. Does Mr. Romero? Do you rescind your amendment?
I rescind my objection.
Thank you. Okay, cool. We'll keep in discussion. You still have a motion of posting said amendment. Mr. Romero?
Yes, my
Okay.
amendment to her motion.
Alright, so it is posted. Any more points of discussion? Like this is an approved amendment, right? Cool.
It is.
It is. He motioned it in. Right. Mr. Aldridge.
Okay, the only thing I would just state is that don't sort of use this as like a way to not go back and process something in there. That you can't like student government shouldn't get reductive in terms like just doing the minimum in terms of the bill. We need to make sure everybody responds, but that's still fine.
Ms. Cullen.
So that reasoning why are we putting it in here? If you're saying that we should well no, I understand. Don't give me those faces, people. I've been watching. But y'all are ratchet. I hope that's all the clip in there. Anyway, so you just correct me if I'm wrong, you just said that like we need to go in the 55th term, whoever the senators are, and put it in the
Yes.
A-START area.
Yes.
Then why are we doing that to begin with in the next term instead of doing all this and then getting all frazzled and
That was sort of my point at the start.
Uh-huh.
But I mean it's nothing technically there's nothing wrong with duplicating the things in here, but what you can't do is just put it in here and then not go put it in there. So I understand maybe the purpose you need to get this in by the end of the term so you feel like this term feels like we've made this change, even though obviously the next term can still change it, that's beside the point. It just needs to go back into House 6. So if it needs to be a bill, the first thing needs to take it back out of 3 and put it in 6, that's fine. You still need that bill next term to put it in House 6 about the A-START chairs.
I understand that. I just feel as though like we just worked on this for 20 minutes just to have to review it in the 55th term and put it in a different place as well as this, you know what I mean? If that makes sense to the people who are down for this amendment. I mean, I'm down with it either way, but the fact is you're still having to do it in the 55th term. You're still having to rewrite some sort of legislation for the A-START part, which is, I guess, the whole point of having the A-START shenanigans in the A-START chapter, if that makes sense. But, I mean, whatever the Senate's will.
Mr. Milo.
Just on discussion. I just to answer your question, I just think it's better so that the president knows if he's planning what 3 people, he can't be like, oh, I'm planning on putting the A-START chair here without knowing that and going last minute and be like, oh crap, I need to find someone to fill the last seat. So I think it's better just that to have it here and then have it there so both of them are on the same note that the A-START chair cannot be on the committee.
Ms. Larkin. Oh. Thank you. Ms. Larkin. Mr. Aldridge.
Yeah, it's okay with putting it here. I'm not saying you should not pick it up, even though you just can't not go back and put it in 6. That's one thing I'm saying.
Do we need a third reading for this or?
No.
Mr. Aziz.
Why the similar discussion on the same issue? I think we all agree. So I'm gonna make a motion to vote.
Any objection to moving the voting procedure on SDS 54023 and update the Act Title 3? Seeing no objection. Mr. Aldridge. And 1 is yes, you agree with all the judges. 2 is no, you don't agree with the amendments. And 3 is abstain. Not everybody. With a vote count of 30 to 2 to 1, this bill is approved. Moving on to our agenda. We have our statutory legislation on second reading, Reform of Accountability and Responsibility Trustment Act, read. Mr. Aziz. Oh, Mr. Aldridge stole it. Oh, this one. Sorry.
So I hope everyone had a chance to read the Rare Act. long piece of legislation.
Take a motion. Ms. Pellegrino.
How should I enter the first reading of SES?
Second.
Reading of SES 4021.
Any
Second
objections?
reading.
Any objections to entering second reading of the Rare Act?
Alright.
Seeing no objections, thank you. Mr. Aziz.
So SBS 54-021 is the Rare Act, which the intent of the legislation is to update Title VI to incorporate updates and new additions to chapters.
Very specific, thank you.
The first section is Jus Annex, which it clarifies that the office manager is the ex officio member. And then again, moving on, adds two duties that Jus Annex will be in charge of. First one is the Jus Annex committee must approve website infrastructure changes in regards to the student member website, which means that website is a big deal for all branches, and this body should have input on it since they're the top two of each branch. And also, student government employee pay scales and pay rates shall be determined and approved with the majority vote of Jus Annex. That is a duty that the Jus Annex committee has, but now it's being written down. And lastly, coordinate and collaborate with other student government branches on events and or initiatives that are mutually agreed upon. Next is university-wide committees to update the practices of the UWCs, which are created by the president, and the student body president appoints it. In the past couple of years, they've been using an application process, and this just really means that any USF student who seeks to join a university-wide committee shall complete an application. The application shall be available for at least 5 business days on the student government website, submitted before the application deadline set by the student body president. Student representatives will be chosen from the pool of applicants for each respective university-wide committee. Alright, this one clarifies the role of the UGCA committee. So it clarifies it saying that through electronic mail at the end of each semester, where the representatives university-wide committee has met. Instead of having within 5 business days, which is not practical to teach, so all the committees meet at different times during the semester. Some meet once a semester, some meet weekly. And failure to submit reports by the end of the semester will result in a written warning. So it adds more time for the reports to be submitted. So this is the personnel policy board. This is, let's say, Sean is terminated, and he feels he was wrongfully terminated. He would appeal to this board, and this legislation reforms the board. Most likely would happen in the executive branch of an agency like Safe Team or SUCS. But the way it was originally, it was stacked against the employee. That would make it highly unlikely that their appeal would be successful. So this evens it out to people that are not directly involved in the hiring or firing. So you take out the vice president, you add the attorney general, add the solicitor general, add a ranking justice, have equity between branches, and the Senate President pro tempore, and 2 senators chosen by election. The senators must not be the sponsor of impeachment or on the impeachment committee or on the judicial review committee of the individual in question. Then it says if the PPB is convened while the Senate is on session, the 2 senators shall be appointed by the Senate President. That's to take into consideration winter breaks and other breaks that occur. Carlos?
So what happens if one of the people who, I guess, come to, I don't know, is this a committee that would be formed, or, I don't know.
It's like
a board?
The board's like an appeal, like your final appeal board.
Right.
If you're wrongfully terminated.
So what would happen if one of the people who is on the board or one of the positions that are on the board are also, I guess, happen to be the person who
Was terminated?
Yeah, was terminated.
There's an order of succession for pretty much every one of these. We don't leave chair positions open, so like JDC would have been filled pretty much.
Once you terminate once Gary signs it, it's like to immediately occur. So there'll be a new ranking justice or a new solicitor general on that same time. Alright, moving down, a member from student government from Esgato, other than the director, as ex officio non-voting member. Pretty much the rationale of the committee was that Gary's the one that signs your termination. It would be best to have someone that's not Gary as the person on the committee. Three more here. Then moving on, the PPB shall convene after a terminated employee files an official complaint of termination without justifiable cause to the student government SCAO director. The terminated employee shall include any evidence with their complaint. The appealing employee shall have the burden of proof to show there was a lack of justifiable cause in the termination. So it standardizes it from the past procedure where it goes from court to court to investigate, where it's just that it's similar to mirrors the grievance procedure where it's received by the SCI director the timestamp, and then the PPB will investigate the worthiness. So it's standardized and not left up to like personal feelings or judgment calls. So moving on, going on to the SCAO director shall timestamp the official complaint of termination without justifiable cause and evidence to create a hard copy for filing. That's similar to the grievance procedure as well. To have a hard copy. Then moving on to after the timestamp is received, the SCAO director shall immediately notify the Senate Committee on Judicial and Ethics Chair via email that an official complaint of termination without justifiable cause is submitted. The next clause, the Senate Committee on Judicial and Ethics Chair shall convene the PPB within 10 business days after receiving the official complaint from the SCAO director. And the JEC chair shall be responsible for notifying the affected branch, agency, or bureau, the employee who filed the complaint, and the members of the PPB of the time, date, and location of the meeting with at least 2 business days in advance. Moving on, it standardizes the procedure of the appeal. So what it adds is each side will have questioning and a question and answer period. So they'll have up to 10-minute period of say their reasons. The affected employee will enter a period of question and answer from the board, and the employer will have a question and answer. Then the board will have up to 2 business days to render their decision. And this one is the Student Memorial Committee, which is in conjunction with the committee the Student Memorial that we passed in the Senate is being built starting in the summer. So the Student Memorial Committee right now is with Greg Burkus in the executive branch. Something that's very loose and very not very consistent throughout the year. So this adds consistency and legitimacy to the actual memorial planners. So the purpose of the Student Memorial Committee shall be to plan the Student Memorial Ceremony, determine the eligibility of names to be placed on the memorial, and recommend any maintenance needed. So, moving on down, that the Memorial Committee shall be composed of the following members. We'll have the SCAO director as the chair, and then 2 members of the executive branch appointed by the student body president, 2 members of the legislative branch appointed by the Senate president, and 1 member of the judicial branch appointed by the Chief Justice. The Dean for Students or designee, the Dean for Undergraduate Studies or designee. So that's pretty much the last 2 are the current composition. Right now it's just the SCAO director and a member exec, the Dean for Students or the designee. But this clarifies who is on the committee. So next on we're on to eligibility. Right now the current process is written down here, and you also decide extenuating circumstances. So names of students shall be received from the office of the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Dean of Students Office, or Office of Graduate Studies. Then A&S students paying fees who have passed away during the semester, they are enrolled in and or the following semester are entitled to their name on the student memorial. So moving on, students who have passed away while serving in any branch of the military and currently enrolled shall be entitled to have their name on the student memorial. Then members of the USF community who have passed away during university-related activities will also be eligible. And in the case of extraordinary circumstances, the committee may choose to deviate from the above mentioned requirements. Hence, making a committee, that's why they're there. So, moving on to the maintenance portion, the recommended maintenance shall be determined by physical plan, committee members or students, and the committee shall analyze the recommendations to factor in cost and feasibility. So, and the last one is, Super Memorial Committee shall be responsible for planning the Super Memorial in the following manner. Ceremony shall be held at least once a year, and contact the appropriate parties for those who have passed away. Plan the logistics of the ceremony, and any additional duties needed to complete the Super Memorial ceremony. This chapter removes, the branch campuses, which is state law anyway, so it's just like decorative legislation, serves no purpose. So moving on to the programming council, I want something that is for student government wide activities that are all branches supposed to like work together and be like, yeah, we can get this done. So the way it worked, it was a little too large, not very practical, so kind of down to removing the member of computer services, same team, and administrative. Instead having it two members from each branch. And scroll on down. The rules committee decided on the best way to call the committee to order. So the formation of the programming council should be determined by a majority vote of June Senex no earlier than the approval of the executive branch structure and no later than the last Friday in June. Which is pretty much requiring it to be called earlier than later. So it actually could be a function, not something that's ignored like it is now. So all appointments shall be made by the close of business to the director of Escala the next business day after the SU Program Council is formed. And next is the director of Escala shall call the first meeting of the Programming Council to order within 5 business days of formation. And then there's no SOP, so after that. And actually probably that as well. And these are things that the Programming Council will be programming. The SG Fall Spring Social, the holiday party, and any collaborative event. And yeah. Question?
Really, no question. Carla. Miss Belzer.
Okay, so the Judicial Council committee, whatever. Sorry. The end you said. Sorry, I was just going based off the last. The last part you read off of, like the bottom.
Yeah.
The bottom, please.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's programming council.
Yeah.
Sure.
Programming council. Okay, maybe I'm confused.
What?
So this is new.
The Programming Council?
It is existed. It is in existence right now. It has not met.
It's statutorily mandated to meet a while ago. So that not happening. So the effort is to make it smaller and more functional, so it would be like a real programming council for SG-wide initiatives.
Mr. Elo.
Just for clarification for the SG program council, it's essentially 2 members from each board that's supposed to plan like inauguration and other things like that.
No. Oh, this one?
State government inauguration.
Oh yeah.
So that would take place of the executive, I think, Natalie doing that now.
It
Right, programming does
It
right
would
now.
not take place. It would be a group collaboration because the 2 members of the executive branch would obviously be the programming people. Because like inauguration is all 3 branches there anyway. It's a team effort.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Can you go up to 604.2.2?
Yes, sir.
604, you said?
Yeah.
Alright, it's just numbered wrong. You're referring to 605. Yes, no. Like they're just misnumbering, do you see what I'm talking about? Is that what you're referring to or no?
No.
Okay, sure, I'll go.
It's down a little bit.
Sorry.
604.2.2. Just an S after members.
Thank you. Points, discussion, questions? Now again, could you explain all this to your constituents?
I mean, this whole bill has been in the committee for like 5 weeks. Rules committee. Second time here. I think Sean took it out the first time. I mean, yeah, without you guys didn't have it.
Mr. Elo.
I think if it's true that he says spinning rules, he's been here twice, we've all had our emails looked through, I know I've looked through it a couple of times, so there's no more comments we need like to vote on it, so we can.
Mr. Aldridge.
I'd like to object and make us go for third reading first.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any objection, any objection to entering third reading of this bill, of SBS 54021, the Rare Act? Seeing no objections. Senator Elola. Any objection to dispersing third reading? Ms. Bell is there. You have a question? You can.
No. Okay, sorry guys. It's my fault. I'm confused on everything. And
No, it's fine. I'd rather
I
make
didn't have a
everyone be
chance to
comfortable with the
read it
concepts
and,
rather than just.
go through it, so yeah, that's pretty much all. So yeah. And I don't wanna go for anything that I'm absolutely ready for, so.
Do you have any questions?
I don't know.
You want me to go through? Mr. Romero, do you
Was
have
that an objection to his motions?
Well, it's already dispersed. Unless, actually,
was
no,
that an
thank you.
objection?
Was that an objection to disperse the third reading?
I thought that she objected to dispersing it.
Do you rescind your?
I do not rescind.
Alright, with that. Thank you, Mr. Romero. Alright, this is a vote to disperse.
That was a vote to vote.
No, it's vote to disperse.
Oh, okay.
Everyone understands Rare Act, right? I don't have that in my page, Rare Alright, so everyone understands. 1 is yes to disperse, 2 is no, not disperse, 3 is to abstain. Alright. Once you're ready. And everybody. Thank you. With a vote count of 24 to 1, we will accept the motion to disperse. Alright. We've now concluded the third reading. Ms. Pellegrino.
So motion to vote?
Any objection to moving the voting procedures on SBS 54021, the Rare Act? Seeing no objection. Mr. Romero.
I just feel like if people don't understand it, I don't think that people should vote without understanding. So I feel like it'd be good to discuss, even if, you know what I'm saying, I just don't think it's prudent to vote on something if not everyone understands it.
So, I will explain.
Do you rescind the motion?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Elola.
So we actually only have questions, just ask the questions, I mean, we've had this in our emails for what, 2 weeks now, we've had it on board twice already. So if you have any questions, I feel it's more beneficial to do that than to go through the whole bill all over again.
Ms. O'Day.
Can we motion to table this to next week, or does it have to be done today? So if we have another week, we can maybe come back and discuss with further questions rather than.
I believe that was the point of last week.
Or now.
I mean, we have questions that can read.
Ms. Cologne.
I don't know if that was a motion, but I just want to.
It was not.
It was not? Well, can I still state why we still need to do this? Okay, so obviously if you don't have questions, then that's awesome. Let's vote. I'm down for it. But the fact is, at least one person doesn't understand the bill, even though we've had it for 2 weeks. Those people who don't understand need to ask the questions in order to understand. Because like Romero said, you shouldn't be voting on something you don't understand. So for the people that actually have the questions, ask them, or we're voting. Like that's my thing.
Thank you.
Would Mr. Aziz be able to summarize by chapter? instead of
Would you like to enter fourth reading?
Motion to enter fourth reading of SBS 54-021.
Any objections to entering fourth reading of the Rare Act? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Harbaugh. Mr. Aziz.
Beginning, Rare Act. So, the Jewish Senate is the top two of each branch, and they have duties that they do, but it's not in statute. So, this chapter adds the duties which they do, so it's in statute, so they can consistently do them. And it's consistent to make the office manager ex officio with all our other ex-officio people.
Anyone may ask questions at any point at this point.
So
because
these are duties that you Senate. This one is what they do right now. And this one is something that they will be doing because the website affects all branches of city government. And you can't have one branch just making a website like, yeah, I'll do it. They should have the input of all branches. And the Senate committee.
Thank you, sir.
Questions?
Questions about you, Senate?
So, University Wide Committee, this adds to the current application process that they have out, that they use, which is more consistent, and it's more fair, instead of just having the supervisor president officially on. You have an application to fill out, and it's pretty brief, like I filled it out before, to be in GWC.
Well, once you, have you finished yours? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Priest.
Can we go back to 6 weeks back?
Sure.
Quick question, does GSNX get paid?
GSNX are like Sham and Adam, Will and Scott and Brian's helping like a
Brian and
yes,
Shapiro.
yeah.
And then
they're already paid, they're not paid in addition. They're already paid right now, but they're 39 hours a year. Or whatever hours.
Because I was wondering, they don't determine their own
So,
pay scale, do they? They pay.
Rarely happens. It's like once every 3 or 4 years. That hasn't happened in a while. The last time I think it happened was like Chief Priest in top level from like 11 to like 25. Yeah.
Just follow up. So, alright, so hypothetically, if I was sitting on GSNX, and I was like, I want to get paid $50. And like everybody else on GSNX is like, yeah, it's a great idea.
We are limited to like HR agreements, right, Gary? We are limited to the amount of increase you can request. Like we can go from $10 to $15 like right away. Then agree with HR.
Within reason,
Yeah.
if I may.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mentor.
My role on the committee is to make sure that we rate things that's done reasonably and done geographic. In other words, we live in a certain area and there's certain rates that apply across the board, across professions. We're not gonna, some students may want to get a higher pay rate, but my job is to make sure that it's equitably fairly.
To address your possible concern, you can have there be a GSNX report to Senate if you so choose, and that way they report everything they've done. And so you don't even have to go in and search public record requests to see if they increase their own pay. Because one, you've already elected these people as your tops. I mean, that's one, I hope you trusted everyone there. But two, you can have them report directly to you what they've done on the Senate floor if you'd like. Like we can even just add them a slot. They might just have no report because we don't meet every week or anything, but monthly or bi-monthly at times. Ms. Clone, sorry.
Bouncing off of that, so there's no legislation that says that they can, I'm trying to articulate this. So there's no legislation within Senate or within Escada that says that they can legitimately increase their pay? Does that make sense?
Well, here, one, you have already allocated how much will be paid to a person, but the fact that you have also stipulated flexible spending to a degree allows for a change. So like right now, like imagine you've allocated money to ASAR for payment, you've allocated money to Senate, you've allocated money to the entire executive branch. So they work within those confines for the most part. But I mean flexible spending again, so yes and no, you have stipulated it, but you also have given them leeway.
So another example is when they have the minimum wage increase, that has to be done through GSNX.
And if you'd like an elaboration on the pay rate, I'm more than happy to. But Mr. Mank is here as well. He knows like the back of his head.
Well, I just had a question, like,
Yes, ma'am.
do they have to tell us the reason why they wanted the pay raise, or is that stipulated anywhere? That's where my concern was with it, which is like probably off topic, but I just wanted to.
I mean, it's Mr. Mecca, go ahead.
The way the pay scales work, as you said, is we look at the whole structure of student record at one time, once a year. So we visit that at the beginning of each term, and we just did that a few months ago, because the university for student affairs raised the minimum wage to $8 or something like that, or 15.
I think it was 758, 798, sorry.
Right, but they made a decision to go to 8, so.
Right, right.
You could go above what's minimally recommended by the federal government, you just can't go below it. So, we were doing it to make sure that, there's windows, boards and ceilings between all positions, like, an assistant director should not make more than a director, that's just common sense in business, common sense in business has. We look at the whole picture, if you raise one, you have to look at the dominant effect, how that impacts every job within that unit, or within that branch, that's how we do it.
Awesome. I'm good now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions on the two Senate closing?
Thanks, sir.
UWC, already mentioned it, any questions?
Everyone knows what the UWC is?
So, choose Dr. Genshaft for like council authorities to create committees, like say like Title IX or Women's Affairs, Latino Affairs, like she makes all these committees, and she appoints people, and the student body president has the ability to appoint students to it. And this portion is just the way it works is like UWC is supposed to report to the UGCA committee, and like the UWCs don't meet, they're all consistent at the same time, so this puts it at the end of each semester. So all the reports go to end of the semester from the UWCs to the UGCA. Instead of having 5 weeks, it's got all of them meet.
So everyone understands except for UWCs. Question. Ms. Pelzer.
I just had a general question. As far as the university-wide committees, because it was like this year, right? So they had needs. Have they accomplished anything?
My last conversation with Mr. Berkowitz, who oversees it, is that he has submitted the reports to former chairman Coco for the committee. I'm not on that committee, so I don't know if they discussed it or where like those reports are, but the UWCs have met in their reporting schedule for each one, so there are reports for them that were submitted. I just know if the committee has like taken it up to read it or received it. I don't know the committee.
Ms. Pelzer.
One question.
Sure.
So, with the whole like I know like they have
Sure.
I know the different subtypes of the university-wide committee. You said they were the president created this committee.
The university.
Dr.
Yeah,
Genshaft picks the
university-wide
topics,
picks.
and then Will can appoint people into it.
And so the purpose of the
each have like a purpose.
It's no different than our ad hocs. What do they accomplish?
Yeah.
They accomplish addressing any issues that are relevant to said topic. So if you have the status of women and you say that our women are not treated equally, and they bring a concern before Dr. Genshaft with advice from students as well. Like, you don't want to neglect the student perspective of all of it, because Dr. Genshaft is mainly only able to appoint faculty if she would like.
I'll give an example. There was one complaint at some point that there were not enough bathrooms to accommodate like lactating women. So that complaint was brought up, and they have like a bathroom now, like the second or third floor near the oval theater that has like a bathroom to accommodate those.
It's a breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Second floor? Second floor. Mr. Romero.
Was it, I think also, isn't the Green Fee also, the Green Fee Committee, is that A type? Is that
No.
by Dr. Genshaft?
No, Green Fee is specifically by Mr. Warmke.
Oh, okay.
Or by Supervisor President. You're good? Alright, any more questions? Seeing none. Personnel Policy Board.
So the Personnel Policy Board, it's for an employee who's most likely situation to happen in the executive branch. or agencies. It's like a computer system gets fired for like stealing something, and they feel they didn't steal it, and they have the ability to file those complaints that they're terminated without justifiable cause. So they find justifiable cause, and it gives them the ability to appeal to this board. And composition is switched so it's more equitable between branches and to involve people that are not involved in the hiring or firing of those individuals. That's why the composition is like you don't see like the vice president or like chief of staff or
Before it
vice
was, right,
president.
before, actually, would you like the old one pulled up simultaneously next to this one to understand the changes, or do you guys
Right here.
understand these changes?
Yeah, vice president, chief of staff.
Yeah, okay, there it is.
The way it was like you have the vice president and chief of staff, it was less people, so you always have more votes against you than for you.
And then it was also the pro temp board who was submitted the grievances.
And the board's the one like then also
Everyone.
had like the director of Escados, the one that like signs the firing. So again, more like theoretically like that against me. So this portion standardizes with our grievance procedures, where it takes away all of the if he or she finds the complaint valid, leaves it up to the PPB to decide if to someone's a grievance. When grievance is submitted, the committee will decide if it's valid or not based on the merits. And this leaves the Escados person as the one that receives it and timestamps it, like the full-time employee that receives and files it. And this is just all of this reformat it up. Here's a timeline of when it should be formed.
Mr. Priest.
Alright, so 603.8, this is just saying say that Senator Romero gets fired, somebody's gonna come in here and be like, hey, so just so you guys know, Senator Romero's been terminated.
Just to be completely accurate, you're someone that would be protected from being fired.
I'm sorry?
So imagine Bulls Radio, because you can't really terminate. He's a senator. He's impeached, or he steps down, or someone's removed. You only terminate really. You can't even terminate really Mr. Wonky. He is also impeached or called down. You terminate someone that is under them. So you terminate someone that you cannot impeach. You get you can't terminate David.
Can I switch to
Sure. I just want to make sure that everyone understood the concept to the fullest. So you imagine director of programming. So you said Natalie, right? If Natalie was terminated without cause, that's continued here. Natalie.
All I'm saying is somebody would come in, like the subcommittee on judiciary and ethics, or the chair would come in and be like, hey guys, just so you know, I'm terminated.
Well,
That person's been terminated.
No. So the JEC chair would then tell the members of this committee here, these people, the JEC chair would tell these people in an email, hey, this person was terminated, said that it has no justifiable cause, we're investigating it.
And it goes to the person that submitted it and their employer.
Yeah, that
should be the
Right.
the vice president. So everyone's notified.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, 603.8,
yeah.
that one's been stricken, the second.
Oh, this?
Yes.
Well, this is just shotgun split up. It says the same thing, pretty much. But it's split up into different things. So 10 days to me, and then it's notifying all these people. And they have 2 business days. It's 2 business days. 2 days, and it's 48 hours notice they need to give for the meeting.
Miss Bellinger.
Does whoever files the okay, so the person who files the complaint, do they have a certain time frame before the JEC does their
What do you mean time frame for what? Time frame to make your appeals?
Yes. Well, yes.
So upon being terminated, you mean?
Yes.
No, there's no statute of limitations for that.
Okay.
You can say hey, I never figured out what the cause was, and here are my issues.
So it would be a year later.
Hypothetically, usually these people would be gone, but that's.
I mean, yeah.
Right. It could be a semester later. Imagine, right? Yeah. Sure.
standardizes the question and answer period. The way they had it was at the discretionary period of the boards, and it's more consistent that each side have their question and answer period. So it's not when you have the this one also the way it was written before that immediately after you have to make a decision to like release it. This gives us two different days. It's consistent to
Thank you.
it gives you this similar to like the court or like election of most commissioners like the evaluations and stuff. So give it time.
Everyone's throats with UV. Alright, moving on.
Student Memorial Committee. Like we did a couple weeks before passing the student memorial. And one of the things we said we were gonna create is a student memorial committee to help manage with these three duties. Planning the ceremony, determining eligibility, and the recommending and maintenance. Because it is not cheap to do all the names. We want to get the eligibility correct so you don't make any mistakes. And currently it's like a mishmash of people in these committees, so this puts the committee now in statute, so it's consistent. And who's on it, and who gets on it, and what the committee does.
Any questions about the Student Memorial Committee?
We asked during the committee, Gary was okay with being the chair. That's why he's the chair. Also non-voting. Mostly student based. There's not much voting that goes on, but when there is voting, the students that are going to be voting in this. And the inter-student seats are guys studying.
Okay, so with the student memorial committee, do you guys have or is there a time frame or like okay, so say if I'm on the student memorial committee and I graduate or like you know what I'm saying? Like is there like a yearly
I talk about like when it starts or when it ends or something like that.
I'm sorry?
Are you trying to figure out the committee starting, like the start time for the committee?
Yeah, like I mean I know a person can be, you know, on committee for like years, but it's just well, I don't know what committee it is. But like is there like a time there's no time structure, I guess. Like the student memorial committee is like just gonna be here forever type thing. You know what I'm saying? Not forever, but I don't know.
The memorial committee is gonna be for term.
Per term.
Yeah, I mean for like 55th term, 56th term. It's not gonna be like the same people on it. Cause that term is gonna close. You can't have the same people you're not here on it.
Is that stated there though?
It's stated on everything. Kind of like in term, except for the court. They have like multiple year terms, but
Cool, thank you, man.
so this determines about eligibility and also leaves room for extraordinary circumstances. And we are on to the programming council, which is a entity that is not functioning at the moment, and the intent is to have it function. We're taking out the 3 members of the agency, making it smaller, and determining a start date and end date, like time parameters when it could be formed. So the idea is to have it formed earlier on in the year by executive structure, which would be like next month in real life. So that's the time frame to make it functional. 25 business days is consistent. There's no SOP, so talk that out. Let's scroll around now. The last bits. And the easy events over here. An example of like a collaborative seminar would be like really for life or like mouth to mouth it. Stuff about like stuff we've done before was like Gandhi Day, the SOS, and the pedestrian team. So those are examples. Questions?
questions? Mr. Monteith.
Motion, Joe, if there's no more questions.
Any objection to moving the voting procedures about SBS 54021? Title System Review, aka the Rare Act. Seeing no objections, we're now in voting procedures. These are filtered out. One is yes, we approve all the changes read and amended in the actual bill. Two is no, we'd like to revert to the original. And three is abstain. Alright. Alright. 32 voting, that gives you 31-0-1. The bill is approved. Moving on down our agenda, we have fiscal legislation on first reading, Valor Student Organization. If the presenter can step forward, please, thank you.
Alright. The Valor Student Organization. There's $15 for materials, $60 for food, for a subtotal of $75 with an overhead of $4.50, making the total $79.50. Are there events? This is one of the events we approved for 29 people, $2 per head is what we did for food, and they requested materials $50, and so that's what we allocated or amended. Of course, the total again is 75, and this event already passed. Funded. Any questions?
With a vote count of 30-0-1, this budget is approved. Announcement. Mr. Romero.
So, like Mr. Aziz did point out earlier, Miles from Moffitt is on May 10th. I know Senator Rodriguez is also planning on doing Miles from Moffitt. So if any of you guys want to do it, I mean, I have a team. You can approach me about that if you want. But also, I think that everyone should just do it. I mean, it's for a good cause. Obviously, if you know anything about Moffitt, it's a research. So they're trying to raise, I think they're going $500,000. Yeah, they're going $500,000. They're like $150,000 right now. So obviously, paying and registering to run is one of the ways that you can do that. So think about doing that. If you want anyone for information, you can contact me.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cruz.
Alright guys, so in case you guys did not pick up the Tampa Bay Review today, or if you don't remember that awesome riveting presentation that we got from Provost Wilcox a couple weeks ago, there was an article that came out today, and we're currently second in the state, only to one other school in our performance standard. A couple numbers for y'all. That means that we're going to receive $8.9 billion. In case you guys just want some fun facts, percent of bachelor graduates employed for continuing education within a year from the University of South Florida is at about 7%, and our sixth year
Next week, so prizes I'll have all that for Senate next week. You listened to it and
Yes, I was listening in my
Alright,
phone.
cool. Make sure you guys RSVP for the banquet. Don't forget that. It's due by It's due by Friday actually. So if you're going, RSVP. Cool. Miss Alimi.
African Student Association are having African Night on Saturday, April 19th. Please come out.
Thank you, ma'am. Abla.
Alright, I believe Mr. Patel forgot to include this in the agenda, but, I think at the end of the agenda, but the ad hoc is created and is running for the Title VII review. We had our first meeting on Friday at 10 a.m. We're having 2 more meetings, one on Thursday at 5 p.m. and one on on Friday, 1:30 p.m. So I know the election has had, publicity quite a bit. So I think you should all come in and give all your opinions. You're more than welcome to email any changes that you'd like to see made to Title VII to me. I can give you my information after the meeting. And so I just wanted to update you. We have a lot of suggestions from the ERC and Mr. Hampton and many more of my committee members. So come in, check it out, or let me know any changes you'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Bell is there.
Thank you guys for doing the first reading for me. Appreciate it. Love you guys. Thanks.
Announcements. Mr. Aldridge. No more announcements? Miss Larkin.
For all those that's graduating, 17 more days.
Oh, wow. Don't forget the graduation luncheon. It's at 11:30 on Friday. So if you're graduating, you get a medallion. You get added to your collection of medallions. Miss Levy.
What's if they're graduating in December, like not in May?
I believe it's the same.
It's all 3.
It's for fall.
And summer
May,
and
December.
summer.
May, August, December.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Manko, that's correct? Okay, cool, thank you. Mr. Manko, do you remember what room you recall? Actually, I have it as well. So yeah, any more announcements, questions, concerns? If not, I'll move into final roll call. And guys, remain seated so I can tell you the date and time for this event. And I expect you all to do my letters on graduation. Okay. Alright. Just click it if you're here.
3707.
Yes, sir, it is.
No, 3707.
3707, guys. 3707. Yep, that's the one. Miss Auburn. Do we have any close? No. Has everyone clicked in?
Yes.
Alright. With an accurate count of 29 people present. Ms. Auburn, your motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Any objection moving in the adjourning meeting? Mr. Hasuna, is that a valid concern?
He cannot make objections.
If it is a gallery and they would like an open forum statement, then yes, they can make.
Okay, I don't respect it.
That's nice. Cool. That is not an objection. We are now adjourned at 8:25 p.m. But no, we let him object in case he's a gallery, because it's no different than any other gallery member. If they're unpleased with their body, they can suggest and make changes.
I love how you change your